Welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm here with Matthew Mitchell. How you doing today, bud?
Pretty good. Kind of tired, honestly.
We are coming at you live from South Texas, and I am extremely tired too. We have had a amazing 5 days of hunting out here. It's just been incredible.
It's been really incredible. We really got off to a like a rocket ship. I mean, when we came in, I think within 10 minutes we were on quail.
That's right.
I mean, it was
your first quail.
Yeah, it was.
You got your first quail.
Yeah. And it was basically like the idea was to just put a bug bomb in a blind, and you said, "Hey, why don't you walk up that road real quick?" And I started walking, and next thing I knew, you were behind me, and I went left, you went right, and you flushed out some birds. And I don't know, it just like came across like right there about 15 yards away, and bam.
So cool, man.
It was cool. It was really neat because that's like how you picture it. You know, it's like sort of, like kind of crossing you, not necessarily flying away. It's just that imagery of sort of shooting a small bird like a dove or a quail, and it's just, I'm really glad that the first quail was here at this place, this special place, and, where they live down here and everything. But, yeah, it was really neat.
Yeah, man, it was such a fun thing because I was like, I'm gonna get this bug bomb, and I was like, wait, I'm gonna go ahead and walk with you, and I was like, we can't miss this. We literally had just pulled into the ranch. We're at my family ranch. It's been in my family for 5 generations, and we had just pulled in, but like kind of what we talked about before in other podcasts, the kind of preparation that you have to do to kind of be hunt ready. And in the blinds, a key part of that is making sure you don't have 300 wasps and yellow jackets and things flying around. Because last year I sat up in I was going to sit up in one stand, and it was just like a tornado of them flew out, man. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so same kind of case here. There's just been a few blinds that had been neglected and just needed to have some attention to them because it's hard to manage everything. And, it's like if there's one that isn't hunted a lot, it's like, okay, well, you kind of let that slide. But it's amazing how quickly they can come in there and build nests.
All these blinds have them. I mean, the blinds are high up. And down here in South Texas, the mesquite is about the tallest tree, unless if you're on a creek bed.
Right.
And there's cactus and thorny brush and just, I mean, it's thick and low. And so the blinds kind of get you up at the mesquite level at least. And,
yeah.
And so it's a great spot for the wasp.
Yep.
Yeah.
And some owls, everything else that may come in. So you got to be careful. Like, that'll wake you up in the morning. You get up there at 5 a.m, all of a sudden a whole huge owl comes out at you. But yeah, but back to our setup there, we're just kind of getting things prepped for the rest of the hunt. And we knew we wanted to hunt that the next morning. So we're going to go ahead and set up a bug bomb, kill anything that was in there before we get in. And yeah, we went off like a rocket ship, man.
Actually, the beginning setup was at your house in Houston. We put the shotguns purposely kind of on top of the entire, this truck is packed full. The back end, totally. the back section, like right behind the driver and passenger seats or the back seats. And so the shotguns were ready up at the top in the back seat.
Quickest grab.
Because, when you get here, you just really never know what you'll come across, whether it's small game or even big game. I mean, you can be driving down the road.
We pulled our rifles out just in case,
No.
You never know what you're going to see out there. We've been seeing a lot of pigs and stuff. We got white-tailed deer out here. There's coyote. We get sandhill crane. What am I missing here?
Turkey.
Turkey. Yep. I've heard about
rattlesnake.
Those. Rattlesnakes, yes. There's there too. We got indigo snakes. We're not hunting those, but we got to see one of those too, which was amazing. But I guess we'll get back to that when after you shot the quail, we kind of got here situated and got everything unpacked, and then kind of like what we normally do is take a shot and make sure our rifles are staying true. And we're banging out 100, 200, and 300, and we're like, okay, we're ready to go.
Yeah, and it's a nice feeling when you show up and you take a few shots, like 3 shots basically.
Yep.
And the 100-yard is a paper target, and it's the kind of setup where you just keep putting stickers over the top of it for keeping the target kind of fresh and clean. And then the 200 and 300 are these metal. What kind of? It's just like iron metal or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's like 3/8 inch thick metal. There's a guy that was on the Texas Hunting Forum that was selling them, and he I guess he cuts them and he has a bunch of different sizes. And I picked them up a long time ago, and we just spray paint them white so you can kind of see them real well. Whether you're using a regular rifle or if you're using thermal, they'll kind of show up pretty well on those too. So,
but it's about about the size of a just a dinner plate basically.
Yeah, I think we had like a 12-inch. At the 300 and like a 10-inch at the 200.
Yeah. And so we, there's such a good feeling of, and then ting.
Dude, that is such a cool sound.
Yeah, it really is. Well, it's cool because like you're like, okay, I'm the gun is still where it was last time I picked it up, you know? And, I think I hit center on 200. And you were a couple inches or an inch high or something. And then on 300, I think you were center. And then I was basically the bottom of it. But I knew then I hit the bottom of it, but I knew that if I was ever shooting at 300, I could just kind of hold over a bit.
Right.
Which, not necessarily adjusting the scope, but just,
And in our scopes we were using, we both have mil reticles and we have hash lines every 0.2 mils. So really we can dial in and figure out exactly, okay, at 200, you got to raise it 0.3 mils. At 300, it's 0.9 mils, or at least that was for my rifle. And at my family ranch in Central Texas, it's a whole different setup. And we kind of look at this too, and we check it out because each time you're going to have different weather, maybe different wind, different levels of humidity. And so we try to take pretty meticulous notes about which ones are hitting where at each place and each time. And that way you kind of have a blueprint of what your rifle's going to do. It's, last year we were here and it was 65 degrees and, it was a really humid, a lot of humidity, and this is what this setting was. And we kind of go to that setting and we're aces then. So
I know a lot of people can, like people who are in the hunting world and who do this annually, they know exactly what we're talking about. So, it's like just making sure you're sharp and all that. And even what's nice on sort of that holdover idea is, you can use like the reticle and sort of know where to target the deer, but also or any other animal, just having that dinner plate size. I mean, that's the vitals.
Right.
And so even if you just sort of at 300 pick the scope up a little higher and you're still thinking about dinner plate circle, you're going to find something. If you're steady and you're shooting true, you're going to find some vital. That's important.
And that's a great thing too. Even if you have just a single crosshair set up, right?
Yep.
If you are shooting at your target and you're at 200, 2 inches low, okay. Well, if you have an animal at 200 yards, then just go ahead and raise it up 2 inches or whatever that may be per rifle. Every bullet you're shooting is different powder, different bullet. It's everything in different brass, all the things, different primer, all the things can make a difference. We're using hand loads that I had hand loaded. Jason Garvey, a previous podcast guest, got me into that. And man, it's a game changer being able to like dial in and have such repeatable performance and accuracy. And so we practice this all year long though. This isn't something we're just showing up and doing. It's like throughout the year. I mean, we've kind of talked about in previous podcasts for those who've heard it. We're practicing. And that's really key. It's so important to get out there and practice and know what your rifle and know what your ammo is going to be doing.
Yeah, and kind of a rewind on practicing. There's a ranch in Central Texas, and completely different environment, setup, and everything. But we go there a month earlier, and in Central Texas, that's when the deer are rutting there, and so it's an opportunity to kind of get in the blind and kind of figure things out. It's an opportunity to, like we bring these bins that have ammo and other hunting equipment and all this stuff. And it's just a really good primer, to sort of get going on what this trip is here,
And
this
what
season.
that is this is our cooler packing hunt.
It really is. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the truck being completely filled to the brim. A lot of that was with our coolers because we're usually going home with a lot of meat and a lot of variety of meat too. And that's what this trip is for. The deer in Central Texas, they're smaller than they are in South Texas. And, you know, a mature buck here could be 200 pounds, and a mature buck there was like, I think the largest ever at our ranch was like 175 pounds.
Right.
I mean, we're talking live weight.
Yeah.
But like it's a 25 pound difference.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable what it is. So this is like where we definitely come to fill our freezers.
Well, it's a game rich environment. I mean, it's even without all the ranches down here and sort of the blind and feeder scenario and all that stuff. If you know, like you can tell that indigenous folks were hunting the land. I mean, you're finding so many tools and arrowheads and all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, this area has been game rich for a very long time.
Absolutely.
The birds, oh my, that's how you can tell a place is on fire with wildlife, is when the birds are in. And I mean, like, you look at another good example is like where we live in Houston, there's a place called Brazos Bend State Park, and it's famous for the alligators. But really, when you take a close look, there's so many bird species, you know, and it's real rich in that, in terms of like the bugs and the ability for these birds to like kind of be on the ground and just sort of eating seeds and plants, and it's just like that here. Completely different environment, but you can always tell that there's a healthy environment when there's a lot of birds around.
That's absolutely 100% correct. It's so bountiful here. It's amazing. I wanted to circle back. You just mentioned artifacts, and one of the first things we did on a walk was look for arrowheads and artifacts, because there's a ton of them here. And we found Clovis points. I mean, you know, going back 10,000 BC, right? There's like stuff here. It's been around for a long time. And
That's
then
right.
Even my, great grandparents, like they were around the time when there were still Indians in this area. You know, it wasn't like that far back, probably not using, as much we're seeing some things and picking up some stuff that's hundreds of years old and thousands of years old that we're seeing a lot of. But it's amazing how many artifacts are out here. And you found your very first artifact here.
I did. Something that I'm not versed in this world. Like, I don't know what people tend to find. I don't know, like what the age of anything. I don't, this is all very new to me. But apparently I picked up something that is sometimes a little bit more difficult to find, I think, just because of it hides itself a little bit more. And it's this kind of scraper tool. Mm-hmm. And it fits. It's really neat. It fits in your hand and kind of just the right way. Like, you sort of start to hold it and you find the edge, like where they would use to scrape. And then all of a sudden you realize, like, wow, this thing really fits in my hand very well, And so it was beautifully chipped out on one side. Like, what's that technique called when they strike it and make sort of the edge? But
there's flaking. This is where we need Colin Williams. He went and took a course about this, right? And he was here. But that's, I forget exactly. We'll have to look that one up.
But it sort of flakes away, and it has like this. It's like a ribbon where you can tell they kind of knock the rock out, and every time that they kind of hit it and the chip of rock flakes off, it starts to further create a sharper point. And so one side was had a little bit of that, but I think the rock sort of had a natural sort of curve going on, right. and it just, they were chipping the other side away, and it was sharp enough that, as we'll get to later, I was able to test out. And
that's it. That if those who aren't familiar and haven't seen, or not familiar with arrowheads much, it's like, this is like, think about it like a serrated knife. It's mm-hmm. going to have that's what it's kind of going to look like on the edge, and that's kind of like what you look for, that kind of coming together on the edge. If there's any of that sticking out of the ground, even if it's a little bit, arrowheads a lot of times are buried. I mean, we don't do any digging here; it's all surface finds. So you kind of train your eye, and I think now once you got that, you're going to be you found a second tool too, right? So yeah. I mean, like your eyes are on it now. It's going to be floodgates now. But yeah, so we have, and I'll show a picture of some of the collections of some of the ones we found out here. Man, there's some amazing pieces. And
you have several boxes. I mean, yeah, it's amazing.
I love them. I got these little display boxes. You can get them. A lot of different people make them. And I've got those, and have a kind of a try to get them a little bit by size. But there's a an artifact book here in Texas. I'm sure there may be some for other states where you can kind of take a look at each page that will say, okay, this is the area. This is maybe 700 years old. This is maybe 2,000 years old. And, the different types that are out there. So it's something you can learn a lot about and kind of, we know where the era that some of them were maybe from, but so it's kind of just neat to see some from all these different eras and different types out here. And there's a bunch of different types. It's so cool.
And, coming out here and kind of finding or seeing these that you show me the box and like there's several sitting around the house here and everything. But when I was traveling to England recently, we were in a museum and I was seeing stone tools and arrowheads from time periods that were, in the last 10,000 years, basically. And it's really interesting how around the world they're slightly different because of whatever the for the shaft or whatever for the arrow, whatever wood it's being made from, or whatever they have to kind of tie one in, like the arrowhead to the shaft. It's all different, right? So like different regions will have sort of a slightly different makeup in the way, like where the bottom of the arrowhead, like where it comes down and meets the wood or the shaft or whatever. I remember seeing that in England and just thinking like that looks like a point, like kind of like a Clovis point in the same time period, but it's different.
Yeah,
it's very different, and so that's kind of neat to me because like you're not just sort of like picking up an arrowhead, you're picking up a piece of history from like this spot.
Yeah,
and they were hunting the same animals that we're here to hunt.
Sure,
minus the hog maybe.
Right.
But yeah, I mean it's just it's a fascinating thing to kind of to sort of come across.
Hey, every time I pick one up, I think about what was this last used for?
Yeah.
Was this something lost? Was this a shot that was missed? Was this a shot that was made?
Yeah.
Was this something that didn't even get to get used? Was it dropped along the way? Was it in a war party? Like you just never really know what it could be. So it's fun. Like I always remember, I think it was Steve Ranella was talking about on one of his podcasts about the idea of like being able to travel back in time and to see like all these amazing, critters that used to be here that are long since extinct, and was seeing the people who were hunting them and how they did it. And it's like, I just think about that same kind of thing. Like I wish I could go back in time and just spend a day around in these different eras and just see what life is like there, what kind of flora and fauna are around. What kind of, because we have a lot of indigenous plants that are here, but we have a ton that are non-indigenous that come out and choke everything out. And it's like, you just wonder. I mean, Central Texas used to be a lot of like grasslands and forbs, and, we try to clear some stuff out there and replant that and kind of, get it back to what it was at some point in time to that extent. But, it's never, ever going to be like it used to be. And it's just amazing. Like, what was it like? What were they hunting? So it can really spin your mind in such a great way, and you have a great little memory to keep and hand down to your kiddos and show them. And I love collecting arrowheads and artifacts, and just having respect for all the people who use them and using what was here on Earth to make it with their hands. And I mean, we got rifles that are traveling. Our bullets are traveling 2,000 feet per second. Yeah. I kind of wonder what their speed was. How close did they have to get these animals? How long was their longest shot? I mean, it just my mind is always spinning with that.
Yeah, and they're going down major game trails and tracking animals and all that kind of stuff. And you can, in a place like this, it's really fascinating because you can really see the foot traffic of these animals, like the way they travel through the cactus and the brush, and there's literally highways. I mean, and yeah. I mean, the tracks aren't just everywhere. They're on the beaten path, if you will.
My buddy Mike Irwin came out here, I don't know, maybe like 5 years ago now, and he brought his drone, and I was like, hey, let's go over to this little area. I'm always curious what's back here because it's so thick, and I was wondering if there's any openings and things. And then you look from that bird's eye view, and there's like trails that are very distinct and huge. Like you're like, oh my gosh, the corridors, and it's so thick with all this mesquite and thorny stuff. You can't get through it, but they're getting through it no problem. And it's like, it's cool, the highways you get to see from up there. It's a neat tool to be able to see. I mean, obviously, Colin and I have the company Map My Ranch, so we're always doing aerial imagery work and such too. And, but we're not getting that detailed and that zoomed in.
That close. Yeah.
But, whenever you are with a drone, it's amazing what you can do there. So, yeah, I love seeing all those on the ground and then kind of being able to also get a little bird's eye view and kind of put it all together in your head.
That's right. Well, after that ride where we picked up the stone tool, we I don't think we had much time left, and it was time to get ready to go to the blind, have the first sit, and something that we are always trying to do early on in this hunt. Now, this is a 5-day period that we're here typically, and we're both trying to fill our coolers with multiple animals. So one thing that feels really good is to try to get a doe on the ground the first day, and so we have those intentions plus pigs, but we have the intentions of going in to get a doe in that first sit, and I proceed to do that. I'm able to get a doe down on the ground, and it always feels so good to be able to kind of get that first animal down and know that you're your whole trip, like, it takes pressure off too. It's just like your whole trip is sort of you're starting to settle into this place, and you're like not worried about what's, like, how many hunts is it going to take to get certain animals, etc. But I think the first night really goes to you in terms of what you were able to see and what you accomplished. I mean, you got to set it up and tell the story.
Yeah, well, we had a turkey that came out, and I was close enough it was close enough that I got down out of the blind. I always bring my shotgun with me, and it was about 100 yards away, and I kind of got up and snuck through the brush, and it was starting to cross the road, man. I just put a bead on its head and nailed it, and then I was like, okay, back up to the blind, because there were still deer around. I mean, so you take a shot out here, they don't scatter necessarily. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't.
Or they come back.
They'll come back.
Yeah.
So it was like my goal was to get a doe, and that's what I wanted to do. But I always take my shotgun with me because you just never know. And I was just blessed with that. It was a nice Jake. We had been seeing him around that area on some of the game trail cameras earlier. I mean, I sent you some of those too, but we had pictures of 15, 20 turkey, and then it just went radio silent, man.
Right.
We didn't see them at all, and except for this one Jake. So I got him on the ground and got back up in the blind and grabbed my rifle and was looking at some does, and didn't see anyone that was like a good shooter. For us, it's 3.5 years or older most of the time. Get those out and get a lot of meat with those. And there's some out here, some of the 5.5-year-old doe are just massive. I mean, they look
very
like
big
books. They look like bucks in other counties and such too. They're big, and I was kind of hoping for one of those, but I'd see a lot of mamas with some babies, and it's just like I'm not going to do that. That's a personal thing, but I ended up waiting around, and they all just kind of scattered off at this one point in time. And I looked up, and this tank of a hog comes out. And this thing, I've learned something that, I definitely think is good advice for people too. You see a hog, they can be real skittish, and they don't stop. They're always kind of going. Mm-hmm. And so it came out, and I just put a bead on it and took a shot, and it dropped right there. And then let out this primal scream, and it got back up, shook itself off, and ran into the brush. And I was like, oh no. But I could see where I hit it, and I knew I was dialed in, so I knew it was a kill shot. And you got to track them, and pigs out here can be a little difficult.
We've talked about this, we've been here 5 days, and we've talked about the shot and everything. I didn't realize he hit the ground.
He hit the ground.
Okay.
He dropped straight out, and it was almost like he was looking at me,
mm-hmm.
and he was sprawled out on his belly, and his legs are kicking, and I'm seeing him in the scope, and his mouth is open, he's clacking and screaming and squealing,
yeah.
and it was it was
Very primal, I'm sure.
intense. Very. I was like, whoa. And I was racking ready to put another one in, and it just got up so quick, and I just didn't get a second shot off, but I knew I hit it well. And that's the kind of thing out here is like, you just, I've shot some before in that armored chest, like of theirs. And I, with a 30-06 and actually in that same spot, shot one, hit the ground, didn't move for 3 minutes, got up, shook its body off, and then walked off like nothing had happened. And I was at that point in time, I had put the gun back down. Usually I stay on it for, at least a minute or something like that. If there's no movement, if there's other movement, you put the animal out of its misery if that's what's happening. But I mean, I hit that thing dead center in the chest.
Yeah.
Went over there. There's one drop of blood the size of a quarter. That was it. And I was like, what? It just absorbed it. All that fat. I mean, that was a big hog too, but it just took that 30-06. And that is something that you don't think that's going to happen. So I kind of went a little higher up on the shot in the neck, trying not to hit that armored plate. And yeah, so then we are going to finish out our hunt there too. So we still had a little bit of time, and you don't know what else is going to come out. I was really jonesing for a doe. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be upset about the fact that I could get a turkey and a hog. But then the hog, hadn't found it yet. So I definitely wanted to get a doe if we could, but nothing came out the rest of that night that was, no big bucks or anything or any coal bucks we're looking for. So, then it was time to go and get our vehicle and go pick you up and go for a little search party.
Yeah, actually, I had the vehicle, so I had to drive over to the doe, and thank God I've been strength training lately. I was in deadlifting and things like that. Like I picked this doe up and like barely get her onto the back of the vehicle.
It's a Kubota. We call it the buggy.
We call it the buggy.
Or the lizard. This one guy used to always call it the lizard.
Like the buggy.
And they're like, what? Lizard? Why does he call it the lizard? And he's like, Kubota. Like the dragon, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Kubota. That's the lizard. So it goes by many names. It's our buddy Larry's, and he lets us use it. And so, yeah. Go ahead, though.
So, yeah, it took 2 tries anyway. I mean, so like anyway, get her up and then drive over to George where he's at, and we go pick up the turkey, and then we proceed over to where he shot the hog, and no blood whatsoever. And so it's a grid search at that point, and it didn't take you long though. I don't know, just something about maybe you were on were you following the game trail? I mean, you might want to talk about that a little bit. I mean, when you're tracking, sometimes it's good to get on these game trails because they'll kind of go back where they came or like use a game trail getting out of there.
Good point. And I've tracked a lot of animals, and there's been some where people are like, I found blood but I didn't find the animal, and I'm like, let me go back there and look. And it's really a matter of just time. It's not giving up.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if there's that much blood or if it's this color blood, there's some things to look for. And, we don't need to get into that right now. But the idea is like what you're looking for is you get into the brush. And for me, it's the path of least resistance.
Yeah. And
some of the brush out here is so thick, it's impenetrable. So it's like, it went this way or this way. Follow this trail, splits again, and then you've got it's
like, if I may, path of least resistance is the game trail.
Of course, but and so that's what's out here moving and creating those spots, and that's where it's dirt on the ground and not something growing. And so I just kind of followed one and went one way. I came back to the V in the road and followed the other one. There's a V off that. It's kind of like tree branches, It's like you just kind of go, and then eventually, I took a step around some cactus, and I was like, whoa, there it is. And it was big.
Really big. So he calls me over because I was looking in another area, and I think I was 10 yards from it. And I just remember going, whoa. And not whoa from how big it was, the smell.
Oh, my gosh. A big old boar. Oh, yeah.
Stinky.
That thing was stinky.
It was really stinky.
And that is something you just deal with.
Totally.
So many people,
Totally,
they
yeah.
shoot a big boar and they throw that thing in a dump or gut pile area. They don't, they or just leave it. I mean,
Well, once you get past the guts and you skin the animal, it's meat hanging, and the meat doesn't stink.
no.
And neither is it bad. I mean, just I would encourage anyone who's a hunter, just pick up Jesse Griffith's hog book. I mean, just read it and kind of immerse yourself into that world, because there is some really, really good meat there. I mean,
Well, talk about that too. What about it? Because I have what I love about that. It's one of my favorite cooking / hunting books. But can you kind of dive into why? What is great about it instructionally wise, and kind of the layout that it does on, I mean, for different size animals and such.
on the book?
Yeah.
The book? Yeah, the book is phenomenal. I mean, it won a James Beard Award.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how good it is. Jesse lays this book out in a way where it breaks down the animals by size, but it also kind of goes into the different methods of cooking too. And obviously along the way with different size animals or different size hogs, because this is the hog book, you are going to use different cooking techniques. And there's also in the front of the book, there's a lot about sort of just hogs in general,
Yeah, kind of a good history in the U.S. of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then with each size, like there's a section, and then there's butchering techniques, pictures, and methodology for every different size hog. So you have the smaller piglets, and then you have the sort of the medium sows, and then the large boars. And I shot a medium sow last year, and I've tried several recipes in there, and I've even ventured over to some of the boar recipes, etc. I mean, obviously these things are interchangeable, but it's just a phenomenal book that really gives you such an in-depth education on why these animals are a nuisance, but also a very nice animal to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, most people go to the grocery store and buy pork, and there's a lot of, especially like in the United States, Mexico, places like that, like around here, pork is a main staple dish for a lot of cultures, right? And so I do wish more hunters would see it that way. We sure saw it that way, and man, that thing was so stinky hanging up. But it was really neat. We took some pictures where George is standing next to the hog before he was gonna gut and skin the animal, and it was as tall as you are.
Yeah. It was bigger than me, I think. I think it was maybe, I was thinking 200 pounds, and then later on I found reason to think that it might have been a little bit less, which we can get into later on. But yeah, I definitely teaser. So I remember grabbing it because I didn't have my headlamp like an idiot, and I needed to be able to pull it out to the road to where he could load it. And I needed to get, Matt had to guide me out and kind of walk me, he's kind of walking in front of me. I'm kind of dragging it by its back feet and having to stop many a times. It was very heavy. I mean, it was, dude, it was a workout. And the thing that I needed to do is, like, while there's game trails, there's areas where, animal doesn't always fall in the perfect spot, right? So there's a bunch of cactus. Sometimes you got to clear that stuff, and you have to be able to make a pathway. You're not going to be hurting yourself, or, you don't want to get a bunch of cactus, stickers and stuff.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen, but you try to not,
it.
You don't want to like run, this hog through a bunch of cactus, and then when you're skinning it, you're having to deal with that. So I'm trying to, be mindful of where I'm going, but after, I don't know, I'd say a few minutes, it might've been 10, there's a couple breaks along the way. Got it back out, and, we loaded that thing up, and that was another little workout there too. But got that back, and grabbed the turkey and your doe, and we came back and got to work, because that's when the work starts when the animal hits the ground. And I find it fun. Some people are like, "Oh, it's when the fun ends and the work begins." It's like, no, this is all fun, but
it's all full circle. We've talked about it so many times when we get together, and just with that, like on the phone or whatever, but also on this podcast, we've talked about it. Like, there's a full circle of events happening annually when it comes to the hunting ritual, and it's doing the deed in the field, getting the animal down. Then there's the skinning and butchering. Then there's the proper techniques for packing it away in your freezer. Then there's bringing the meat right back out, and throughout the year, and trying various recipes and cooking and having and you can tell stories of where this animal came from.
Yeah.
And you could just be sitting there with your family and be thinking about it, or if people come over, or friends and family, you can tell stories about it. There is a full circle aspect of hunting that I find very, very rewarding to be able to kind of do in this life.
Well, and Matthew had really helped me step up my game with cooking, because I've tried a lot of different things in the past, but I never got as in depth as when we met and we started hunting together. And he'd bring over some dish that, I remember you brought some javelina over and had some fixins for tacos, and like, you got to try this. And I had some, my wife had some, and I thought, the idea of javelina, for a lot of people, they're like, nope, don't want anything to do with them. And Meg was willing to try. And she tried it, and she's like, "Oh my God, when can we get more of this?" And I was like, "All right, like yes, when something's cooked right, and it's like people, some of these things are gamey or whatever. It's like you couldn't tell what this was. There's no way you could tell it was javelina. It was just delicious meat, and it just you can tell it's kind of like a pork type thing, but man, it's so good. And some of these recipes we've tried out, in the future we'll be actually showing some videos, because we're going to be kind of launching a thing called BDT Cooks. What is BDT? Well, it stands for birthday twins, because Matthew and I have the exact same birthday, which was an amazing thing to find out when we met. We already liked each other, and then I forgot even how it ccame up.
I feel like it's like a year later or something. I don't know. It was weird. Yeah.
It was like, and then I forgot, someone's like, "Oh, yeah, your birthday's coming up."
That was it.
I think I kind of looked over, like, I think it was Elaine said something, your wife, and I was like, "His birthday's in April? Oh, that's cool." And he's like, "Yeah, April 6th." And I was like, "No way! Oh my God, mine's April 6th too." I got a few years on you and some more gray hairs and a little more, balding here, but I definitely it's coming, by the way, and
it's there, dude. What are you talking about?
You make it look so good. But it was like, oh my gosh, like what a cool thing. And I mean, we have a bunch of synchronicities in our friendships and our viewpoints, and how we take in information and just how we see the world. And so it's just such a, like, I can't believe it. And I think I might have coined it one day. I was like, BDT. And I was like, birthday twins.
Yep.
And so
that was it.
Now when we go to the ranch, like, BDT ranch trip. All right.
That's right.
And so we one day decided we'd do BDT Cooks. And so we've taken some recipes, like Jesse Griffiths from the Hog Book, or his other book, A Field. I mean, there's the Hunter Chef, Hank Shaw. Yep. There's a Meat Eater cookbooks. I mean, there's a bunch of Steve Rinella stuff. We've tried different things out, and we're starting to film it. We've done some reviews, kind of like post, or maybe take a couple pictures while we're cooking. But
that's right. Yeah.
We're going to do some more in-depth stuff where we're actually going to be, hey, we're going to check this recipe. Here's how you do it, and kind of walk someone through visually so they can see how to do that recipe, and give our thumbs up, thumbs down. I mean, I've tried some recipes when I was working on different turkey legs, and some are like, nope, that did not cook long enough. That needs to be lower and slower, and that did not work out. It's a good idea, good spices, good combination. However, we need to try something else next time.
That's right.
So,
and it's I think it'll be neat because we're it's not a chef thing. It's not like where we're like trying to bring recipes to the world. it's just one of those things where people are already doing that. And if we can sort of go through various recipes and talk about what they taste like and the experience that we're having and why maybe this particular animal was a great fit for that, because I have one recently from a field, which is the first cookbook that Jesse Griffiths came up with. It's a turkey. It's tomato braised turkey legs, and I made that from a wild turkey we shot in April about 2 months ago, and I had some sandhill crane legs and wanted to see what that was going to be like together, because I don't know, it just seemed like a good fit. And so instead of the turkey, I swapped out I put the sandhill crane legs in, and beautiful, phenomenal dish. And it's just one of those things where we're doing this all the time, and why not sort of give people an opportunity to like, oh, this is a great recipe. Hey, I'll go try it.
Yeah,
you know?
we're your everyday guys.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
we're not these chefs. Now, I mean, you definitely are you're more ahead of me as far as your cooking skills and things too. And
I just know how to read recipes.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow them. I'm so bad at that. Man, I'll be looking at a recipe and I'll see an orange on the counter. Let's try some citrus. And you're like, damn it, George, quit with the freaking citrus. I'm like,
and I also, another one there too is like my wife will, she might pick up the phone or like kind of get distracted. And some of these recipes, like, you need to pay attention when it says stir.
Yeah.
You know, or
right.
or turn the heat down or whatever, you know, like that word's in there for a reason.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
But and so I think the fun is all year round, and butchering to me is one of the things I like most about. It's tiring, but it's one of the things I like most about these trips too, is because you put an animal on the ground, and when you walk up to it, even if it's stinky as all get out, it's like there's an appreciation for that. It's like, wow, this place has provided this, and going through the motions of skinning, gutting, and then eventually butchering is giving that animal that appreciation. And I know that's might sound weird to say, but to me, it's like if the more meat I can get off that animal, the cuts that I'm already thinking about in terms of when it's hanging, and the way it's going to be packaged up and going into the cooler, ultimately to the freezer, ultimately back to the kitchen, into the pot, etc. I mean, like that, I don't want to waste anything.
Oh, absolutely not. And you don't, man. When you clean an animal, all you see is bone at the end. You spend your time. You're meticulous as heck, and I remember when the first time I saw you butcher an animal, because you'd hunted before we met, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy gets it. Some people, you get tired, man. My hands start hurting, and you get maybe a little bit like, kind of, lazy in a sense, where I know I have been. And I'm just like, I could have maybe got that extra little bit of meat, but I didn't. And then as you kind of start to practice what we're practicing more and more, you realize the importance of, taking every single bit that's usable, taking some bones, making some stock, make your own stock,
That's right.
Do it. It's right there. It's like, use everything you possibly can. And
it's a good feeling going to the gut pile with basically, some like the guts and some bone, but minimal, it's like, it again, it's sort of like that appreciation for that animal, and like sort of like this, it's a blessing, really, honestly.
It really is. No, we're blessed to be able to do it. And we're also, when it comes to like hogs, it's like we're doing a service to everyone, and people don't realize that. But hog hunters, you're taking them out. They're an invasive species, and you need to get them out. And I mean, they can cause some serious damage. I mean, do you remember that hole over here in front of the house?
Oh yeah, deep.
It's like 2 feet deep, and it's like 3 foot wide. And we have some hogs that are massive out here right now, 200, maybe 250 pounders. And you drive over that, and like this buggy, it's a side-by-side vehicle that we're talking about, the Kubota, and it's like, you got a front seat, it's it's like a 3-person seat, and then the back is the same, and you hit that and you drop it in there, you could seriously hurt your vehicle or yourself in the process. And they do some damage, and you just see it. I've never seen it more prolific ever before.
Yeah.
I've never seen the rooting like I have before here.
Right. Yeah. This trip. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's insane.
And
We definitely got a lot of hogs, but they're an issue, man. And, a lot of times we're not dealing with it. We're in a hunting area here. This land, it used to be farmed, but you go to farming communities and these farmers plant their fields, and like the next day it's all upturned because the hogs got in there. You see pictures that, there's hundreds of hogs in a field. I mean, they do some serious damage. What I think it's Jesse Griffith's his cooking school. He has what is it? Save the world, eat a hog. So I feel like I'm doing my civic duty here at the same time.
There you go.
Such a delicious duty.
No kidding. No kidding. So after we get these animals in the cooler, then we drive around, because at night there's always something that you need to do with the blinds or feeders or whatever, and it's a never-ending chore at the ranch. There's always something to do, and
always.
So while driving around at night, there's rabbits, and so that was another first. I shot my first rabbit after all this went down. And I actually recently bought a 22 that I ultimately want to give to my daughter, but in the meantime, I am going to use it. And
I didn't even realize that was your first rabbit, because I took the 2 last time.
Mm-hmm.
That was your first rabbit. Congratulations.
That's right.
Rabbit
Thank you.
And a quail. A rabbit and a quail. Good job, man. Oh my gosh. I didn't celebrate that enough. Congratulations.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And since then, I've shot a few more. What was interesting though is I had it all in my head a certain way, like you do. Like everyone has expectations of how things are going to go.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right?
That's
Tyson?
right. Yeah. Or everyone has a plan until they get through the gate at the ranch.
Absolutely.
And so I brought a shooting stick, thinking that I was going to need. This is the first 22 I've ever had. I didn't grow up hunting, so this is the size of that gun is kind of new to me. It's still a rifle, but it's smaller, and so I was thinking a shooting stick was going to be necessary, and I was trying to use a shooting stick and trying to shoot this rabbit, and it was not working out. I think I threw it at you, and then I just shouldered the gun and pop, done, And that was the end of that. That expectation went right out the window.
The shooting stick has stayed in the same spot the rest of the trip.
That's right. And so, but it was really cool to be able to with the gun that I bought to pass down to my daughter, to be able to shoot that first rabbit here in this special place, and so that first day, quail, turkey, hog, deer, rabbit.
That's a great start.
5 different species. I mean, that's how rich this environment is down here, as we've already talked about.
We went 10 for 10 last year, 10 sits, and we had more than 10 kills, but every single time we hunted, we got something.
Yeah.
And it's a variety of game, and so you just never know. And that's kind of, we have this kind of goal / expectation that we'll be able to have days like that. But to start off your first day with that, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's a heck of a start.
And I think another thing that helps to that for that 10 for 10 mentality and all that is that they're everything here we'll go for. I mean, we're not just deer hunters,
right?
So that helps a lot too.
Sure, it sure does.
But so what a day. That was day 1, and the next day everything kind of changed.
It changed. Completely changed.
And we didn't, that's the day that Colin arrived, I believe.
He came
Friday,
got here
late
Thursday,
Friday night.
He got here Friday night. Yep.
Mm-hmm. But the morning sit, the evening sit, we saw action, we saw animals, but just nothing in terms of our own rules here and everything.
Yep.
Just nothing that we could shoot. And then the next day was kind of like that a little bit. At the end of that night, I shot a doe, but it was one of those kind of slow days again. Not slow. I mean, you're seeing animals, but it was slow in terms of like, again, there's like priorities in the list of and how we want to put meat in the cooler. What, like we're not going to shoot a doe that has two young doe with it, or a young buck or whatever. Like if there's sometimes you'll see a young buck kind of hanging around too.
Yeah.
But and then you're not going to shoot certain size bucks. There's rules on that. George,
you let them grow.
That's right.
You want to shoot a big buck, you gotta leave the younger ones there too. Now we have a kind of a thing too where there may be some kind of you have to really study to know. Some people see some funky antler thing and they're like, oh man, it's bad genetics. And it's like, well, yeah, you see it limping on its right side. It's got an injury to its right leg, and that may surface out in its left antler. Like there's things you have to evaluate and determine and study. And so we try to, like a lot of the deer that we've in the past, if they didn't have brow tines, a lot of them are just slick. There's no brow tines. And so we kind of took those out because we liked them to have brow tines.
And the brow tines are like, they're the first points that if you're looking at a deer head on, they're the very 2 points that come straight up, like right over the eyeballs.
Yeah, you hear eye guards and things or different stuff, like, I mean, in kind of bigger animals, but like that idea, it's right above the eyes, and that, so they don't have those. And I mean, a lot of them don't. So in years past, you see a lot more, and we would try to get those out of the herd. But at the same time, it's about, we're not just trying to shoot them and do anything. It's like we're eating them. It's just kind of, okay, you're just being selective, right? But we're very focused on, Matt and I trying to adhere to the rules of the ranch, what maybe wild game biologists have put together, and your doe and your buck numbers, because a lot of times they'll have like kind of a quota of sorts or recommendation on your harvesting in order to what's best for the herd. Biologists study this stuff. You tell them what you've seen, you send them the game trail cameras, you've seen them your incidental observations, and they give you these numbers. And so here is a very doe heavy area, so we're looking for doe. But before you talk about that second doe you got, I think we need to talk about what led up to that shot, because that Saturday night, right? Colin is at a stand that's we're kind of in a triangle of sorts, and we're all within 800 yards of each other. And the way that we're getting in there is we dropped off Matt at the top of of our property in the northern end and kind of drove back around so he could kind of sneak on up. And then we parked the vehicle, and then Colin and I walked together down a sendero, dirt road, and then we split off left and right. So we kind of we hit like a T, and he goes left to his, and I go to the right, and then I kind of go down this lane. And then we get a text from you.
Yeah, there's a sendero, a long dirt lane, like George just said, where I can actually see the end of a shooting lane of where he is set up.
Yeah, he can see probably 1,000 yards.
That's right.
And then it tees.
That's right, exactly. And then I've unloaded the backpack. I've got everything set up in this blind, and I'm looking up and just kind of getting comfortable, and I see a person walk by. And so this is when I know that they have, just by timing and everything, I know that they're probably just arriving to their blinds. And I'm thinking that, I just saw George walk by. And so I text you and say, and Colin, and I just say Bigfoot. Like, that's it. That's all I put.
Because I'm a hairy man.
And then 5 minutes go by, and I had a thought to myself, wow, earlier when we were driving by, George's setup is on the left of me. Like if I'm looking down that road, I know that your blind is like left of where I'm looking. I can't see it, of course, but I just know where he is. And then this person was crossing left to right. And I'm thinking, wait, why would George be crossing? Oh, my goodness. I think someone's on this property who's not supposed to be here. And so now the texts start flying around.
Yep. And that person had a backpack on, right? And I know you didn't get a long look at them, but that is usually an indicator here. We don't have a poaching problem. It's usually an indicator that it's somebody who has come across the border illegally and they are coming through our property. We're 30 miles from the Mexican border, and we have a lot of traffic. The thing that we find, and I'll show some pictures here too now of all the different sets of backpacks. Because like what happens is they'll come across, make that journey. They have clean clothes, medicine, water, some food, and they'll put it in their backpack, and then they get here and they change it into their clothes, and they make the rest of their journey, whether it's to a county road or whether it's to, used to be there's a landfill out here, and that was where I remember the Border Patrol guys said that that's where they used to pick them up a lot, and now it's just everywhere. But we'll find, 10, 20 backpacks all together. So you see someone on your property, it's not their backpack, it's a pretty good indicator that someone's here illegally. I know that people have quite the viewpoints that are various of this
wide-ranging, of course.
Immigration and what's going on
tough
here.
Problem.
I kind of grew up with this being on the property. Like there was always traffic coming through here, based on our vicinity. And I grew up, and I remember, my uncle, like there's a guy who, I think he was like 70 something years old, and he had like the sole of his shoe was blown out on one shoe, and he's like dehydrated as all can be. And he came up to the house, and he gave him water, and he fed him, and like that, like he did what any good human should do, is helping someone out. And this guy was not doing well, and there's people who don't make the goal of their journey here. There's people who, this is really tough terrain, and again, I'll kind of show you guys an example of kind of what is around here. And I can't imagine making that journey. And, it's such a weird thing, because the people who are coming across here, they're trying to get to a better life. And I respect that. I mean, we're a country of immigrants, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's like, all my time I've spent working with Native Americans and Native American Indian elders. And, I always just kind of keep that in mind too, right? There's a Jack White song. It's like, what's what and who's who. You should kick yourself out. You're an immigrant too. It's like, we're all coming from some other place. I mean, I'm Pangean 100%. But whenever it really comes down to it, these folks are a lot of them are trying to just get to a better life. And it's a thing that I didn't know at first what to do, and I kind of just sat and I thought about it, and I called up Border Patrol, and the phone doesn't work. And I have a list of Border Patrol agents. There's been times we've been on hunts before, and I was with my brother-in-laws once, and I was kind of showing them, I had them all in the blind with me, and showing them kind of what's a shooter and what's not, and trying to, just kind of educate them on the property. And hog comes out, and I get that rifle up on, I'm about to take a shot, and I see some dust coming in, and it's like I kind of hear a low rumble, and I put the gun down. They're like, shoot it, what are you doing? And I'm like, there's a vehicle coming right behind where that is. I know I can hit that hog, but man, if I don't, I'm sending it right towards that vehicle, and that's not safe. So go ahead and pull the gun up, and right around, boom, boom, 2 Border Patrol agents turn that corner, man, and they've come flying up. Like, what are you wearing? I'm like, khakis, camo. What am I wearing? How many of you in there? Like, there's 4 of us. Like, what's going on? Like, oh, where'd you come from? Right over there? Oh, okay. Like, what's the big deal? Like, well, you triggered some sensors, and because there was multiple bodies, we came out thinking that it was a group. And they're like, oh, okay. And at that point in time, I was like, I'm going to get your cell phone and your cell phone, and here's my cell phone, here's my business card at the time. I was like, if you guys have any other sensors, we're going to be here hunting all weekend. Please give us a call so that everyone stays safe. And we also, are going to make sure that we don't have hunts that are ruined like that. And so I had probably 5 or 6 agents from all the years of experiences. And, they've gladly given me my cell phone. Oh, text me if anything ever happens, and I couldn't call because the Border Patrol, their station here in South Texas that's near us, the phone lines were down. And they told me that too. Like when we were texting, and for whatever reason, they all just went down like that day. There was some issues. So I'm texting, the agents, and, one of them's like, I'm out here in West Texas, but I'll text my old supervisor and let him know. I was like, yeah, we're hunting here. And, I don't know how big the group is. I don't know, if they're just folks who are trying to get to a better life, or if there's people who are bringing drugs across, or they're smuggling people, if there's sex trafficking. You don't know what's coming through your family's property. I mean, these people are here on our property uninvited, and it's kind of scary.
Right.
And it's like, you're shooting an animal. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to maybe take a chip shot at something that's a little too far because you're sending it into the brush. Is there someone there? Is there a child? Because there's children that come across here.
Sure, you see all kinds of trash that indicates, you can tell there's children.
Absolutely, there's kids' clothing.
Because it's the kind of, I mean, you'll see the kind of food that I feed my child.
Absolutely,
it just has, it's just written in Spanish on the packaging.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's not. The majority of the people that are coming across here, it's not Mexico. They're coming from different places, and as we found out, because there's times where we find these, and you can kind of tell too, right? You'll see a bunch of backpacks, and you can tell how old they are by maybe how much dirt and settling down is on top of it. You see something that looks brand new straight out of Walmart or something like that. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. How recent is this? Yes. Yeah. And we had that same thing happened. We told you this story too, where I was with Colin Williams, Jacob Spradling, Rob Sides, myself, and we were traveling down one of the roads, and Jacob's like, "Hey, hold up, stop!" And there's what appears to be a jacket hanging from the tree. And we've gone over there, and a lot of times we'll find all these backpacks and throw them in a big contractor bag, take them to the front gate, and get rid of them, clean up the land, and try to it's an ongoing process, but it looks like a new jacket as we're approaching to it. And right below it is a backpack, and there's a cell, like a cellular phone charger, and there's the wires hooked up to it, a USB cord. There's no cell phone there. There's a wallet, and shows where the guy's from. It's got his bank cards. It's got cash in it. And he was an electrician, had all these electrician licenses and stuff that we could determine. Some of the stuff I didn't know exactly what it was, but it looked like it was work related. There's pay stubs, and that was like, oh, this guy's still around here. And it was just kind of like, one of those scary moments. And we don't know if he's a coyote, one of the people who are paid to bring people over. They call them coyotes. Or we don't know if it's just a single person. A lot of times it's groups crossing. Yeah. And so went back over to the house, back over to the road. And then Colin's like, look at that. And he picks it up, and it's like a peso. And it's a coin, and it's in the middle of the road. And I was like, that's his marker. So maybe at nighttime, he's coming across, if he has a flashlight, it'll shine, and we'll know where his stuff is. It was like, whoa. So, we've had all these experiences and whatnot, and I texted the Border Patrol, and they're like, yeah, we are really busy. We got a couple other calls that are going on, but we have someone who's going to come out to you, maybe in an hour or two. So it's like, okay, I guess we'll finish up our hunt, because by that time everything had ensued. We're seeing game. So we're like, whoa, okay. Colin saw javelina.
Yep, I saw him.
You saw him first. Yeah, you saw him down that same
1,000 yards away.
Eagle eye.
Well, they're blobs.
No, I know. They
are. And then you pick up your binoculars, and it's like, I think that's how. No, there's
a hog. Is it javelina? I'm not sure.
Even in the binoculars, it's like still blobby a little bit. But
yep.
But yeah, we were seeing game. I saw that was the first. I think I saw the first kind of getting close to mature buck on that sit, and saw several doe, and had a lot of action right behind me. I had that, and that's where I shot that doe, just out the window, in the door, in the back.
Yeah, and there's a window built into the door, which, for those who have
not an easy
hunted
shot.
And those too, it's not the best setup. There's no place to rest your arm. There's no kind of 3 points of contact. You kind of you got to know what you're doing, and obviously you do. So you're
that's a good. We were talking about these things this weekend, because it's always a good reminder. And we were talking with Colin about how when you're in a blind, that if you can rest your gun kind of in the corner of a window, and then apply pressure with your hand on the stock, or pull on the strap, or. And in this case, I don't think I even mentioned this to you. You had that trick about the sling kind of coming over to your arm.
Yeah, pulling it into you.
I just got a little tangled up putting the gun on the window, and my elbow actually did kind of get locked into the sling, and I put my hand up, and it that actually works. It steadies you a little bit better, and so it was one of those shots where I've had a lot of shots out of blinds where like I am true, like the crosshairs move the way I want them to move, like it's steady. This one was a little bit kind of like I could tell how fast the crosshairs were dancing slightly, and it was just a little like I knew when to pull the trigger because like the crosshair was kind of coming, like it was just you can't see me right now, but George can, and I've got my fingers crossed and I'm kind of moving them slow in a circle, right? And so when it found sort of that space right there, right behind the back shoulder and the rib cage, I pulled the trigger. And it went down right there on the road, another heart shot. Unfortunately, I do like, I'd rather keep the heart than blow it all out, but,
they're tasty for those who don't know.
Absolutely.
We will definitely be doing a video at some point. Hopefully selfishly, I want you to do that pokey dish again, cause it's so tasty.
Right.
But it's like tuna. You either barely cook or you don't at all. We did it raw. Like, it was not cooked, and it was delicious.
That's right.
It's so good. But that's one of those things, man. Don't throw that out. Save it. Look up a good recipe, or hopefully we can share one soon and just check that out. And then there's a lot of really good ones out there for different heart recipes. It's tasty. I was not a heart eater until you came along, and then you kind of made me rethink some different things about liver and pate, and just I'm still not the biggest pate fan. I will sample every single one you make, but I will not eat it for multiple meals. It's something that I like it for when I do, but it's not for me. I don't eat it a lot, but
I've always liked it anyway with like charcuterie.
Oh yeah, it's always great with that.
I mean, it's something I've always gravitated towards in terms of just going to some of your European delis, etc.
Yeah.
But it's fun to make.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a cool thing. I mean, and there's a lot. I mean, a lot of people, if they have the opportunity and the setup, they can kind of cook it right away.
Yep.
Like here, when we come here, a lot of meals are pre-planned. We bring we actually bring wild game dishes that
from the year before,
literally
right?
came, from here. But it's just not really set up to like have a fresh liver dinner,
right?
And I know that that's good.
Yeah.
But I just tend to take it home and I'll freeze it.
Yep.
And throughout the year I'll make pate, and some people have different feelings about freezing organ meats. And
well, we did too until we did the podcast with Larry White.
That's right.
I mean, Wild Game Gourmet. Go check him out, by the way. That is, oh man, he is a chef and a damn good one.
Really good. Yeah.
And y'all should check out that podcast too if you want to get into, if you never cooked a heart, or your other, liver, or you want to hear about different organs and things that you can work with. That's a really good. He's a really good example and teacher, and
very much not just so much knowledge about how to butcher and when to do certain things, and, all that.
But yeah, so like that, you didn't get the heart, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Shot through the heart. Can I say that? Am I going to get charged for this? Am I using someone else's?
Be careful. Be careful. But yeah, we pick up the deer and bring it back, and I remember, skinning and kind of butchering up the deer, and Colin was hanging out with me a bit, but I know you were in here texting Border Patrol, ultimately meeting them, and discussing things with them. So kind of very different nights for you and me on that one.
Totally. And in full honesty here, it affected me a lot.
Sure.
And to the point too where like it kind of debilitated me a bit. Like I was emotionally just really drained, because for me it's like, okay, this ranch has been in my family 5 generations. Eventually, I'm a caretaker of it now, and I've been a part of the wild game management for almost 2 decades. But as the generations pass and go on, I'm thinking about the stewardship of the land, and also that passing on to my girls. And the thing that's really messed up is like, what are you passing on? Because that it's not just this family land. Now you have a lot of problems that you're passing on to, because it's a problem when you have trespassers, and they are trespassing on our property. And
then the whole foreign national thing is just like a different level of that.
Totally. I mean, and again, we're not here to talk politics of things too. Everyone has differing opinions. What we're here to talk about, a lot of our conversations, wild game, and
it's perspective. I mean, like
it is.
There's nothing we're saying has anything to do with like, how we might vote for that particular subject. Right. I mean, I don't even think I can vote for it because there's so many angles, There's
so many angles.
But the perspective of like being here and the remoteness of it.
Yeah, you're out. You are out in the woods. You're in the sticks, and you got people coming on your property. You're not expecting it. It's a real shock. This is the first time, in decades that I've been here and someone has visually seen someone, and I've known, other caretakers of the place here too, that, there's a guy named Robert, who used to, help manage the place here, and his, his stepson, Larry does now too. And there's folks who are helping out, and, they have seen people, they have interactions, whether it's families, sometimes it's drug runners. There's like 5 guys, actually 6, that had big old square backpacks, and they were talking in Spanish about how they were going to take Robert out.
Mm-hmm.
And he spoke Spanish. His wife is from Mexico. And he threw him, they demanded water because he had a thing of water in the back of his truck. He's working on the bulldozer. And he throws them 5, one for each of them, and then throws them a 6th one. He's like, yeah, here's for your other guy in the woods. And they all looked at each other, and he said in Spanish, yeah, I'm married to a Mexican woman, and I speak Spanish. He goes, I don't think you want to try to mess with me. And he just showed, on his hip that he had a gun, because they were talking about taking him out.
Yeah.
And my goodness, I guess they were trying to get his truck or whatever, because, they have backpacks full of drugs. And, presumably.
Well, I think, again, perspective, it's like you can imagine multiple scenarios. You can imagine, like the guy who I saw crossing.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a coyote, kind of someone there.
Or
just
the guide. Whatever they call
the guide.
it. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, the person who is sort of managing the traffic, if you will.
Yep.
It could have just been somebody who was part of a larger group, and I saw the last person, maybe.
Right.
Poacher comes to mind.
Poacher?
You never know. I mean, but it's just one of those things where, okay, you don't know who that is. You don't know what's happening. Again, politics aside, it doesn't. That we're talking about someone who's not supposed to be in that spot at that moment.
And that's what hit me hard. It's like thinking about, bringing my family out here and having to deal with that dynamic. That it's very troubling emotionally. And
sure.
it hit me hard. Like, it kind of like froze me up, and I was already very tired. I only got 1 night of sleep. I'm 1 hour in one night. I got 1 hour of sleep the night before. And obviously when we're at the ranch here, we're doing stuff, we're butchering animals, we're going on night hunts, we're always trying to work on little projects. Something's wrong with a vehicle, or something, a tractor needs to be worked on, and we're staying up pretty late, and it's like sometimes midnight or later when we're getting to bed, and we're waking up at 5 and stuff. So there's not a whole bunch of rest that happens here. So I was really worn down, but that just it kicked my ass, and I had to lay down and gotten a little lazy boy here and just took a little cat nap, 10-15 minutes, and really I think I just needed my brain to shut down, because I was troubled, and also the idea of like where you saw that guy cross was probably 300 yards from where you were. You saw it because there was corn laid down, because it was a viewpoint that I had,
mm-hmm.
that I was seeing. It was about 200 yards from where mine was. And so it was like where this person had walked, if I was 10 minutes earlier, I very likely could have crossed paths with them, or a group. And talking to the Border Patrol, he's like, yeah, we have sometimes 100 people coming through here. So I could have had, 1, 2 dozen, 100 people that are there. We don't know, but it was like that hit my mind, and really it disturbed me. And it just was like, I don't know I still, you don't know what to make of those kinds of things. You
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
There's no fix. There's no magic wand. There's nothing because, people are still going to come over here. Whether you try to build a wall, they're coming around it, they're going over it or under it, or they're just going to the next place so there isn't one, or they're crossing a river. And sometimes you cross the river, your ankles don't even get wet. There's areas that's just easy to get across. And it's like there are people coming over here. And like right now, there's a lot of them. He said they're busier than ever. He said in Eagle Pass, a neighboring town that's kind of about the size of our local town here, that, but it's a little bit of ways, but it's kind of similar from the border. And he has 3,000, they said they had 3,000 people in custody.
Yeah. Quite a bit.
I mean, so it's a lot of people coming through, a lot of traffic right now. And so just that messed with my head. So anyway,
it's perspective. It's like you can't, you have to be on the border here to see it, to like have that perspective of like how impactful that could be. And I mean, imagine all the ranchers and just everyone who makes a living on the border and across all these towns and places. I'm again not trying to be political or anything, but it's one of those things where I think a lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to this subject.
Yeah, I mean, and if like imagine you have 12 people or 50 or 100 that are coming through your yard. You're not going to like that. Like it's going to make you feel uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
And it's not.
I think that person probably is. I can imagine that person is never seen.
No,
like that. Like it's not. It's the chance encounter. It's not the like the. Yeah, these people want to stay hidden.
Yeah, he's moving during hunting season, during hunting hours, which is risky.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole trip that they're making is risky, but
we were kind of in a triangle there.
Yeah.
So he probably was just trying to get the hell out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He probably heard the vehicle and things too. And and there's a water tank nearby. And the next day I found a makeup purse, basically. Yeah. And the lady's ID was in there, and a bank card, and it expired on 4/20, April 20th, or April 2020.
Yeah.
And so it's near the tank. I don't know. My uncle was saying, he's like, well, maybe they're about to get picked up, and she didn't want to have an ID on her. And so she threw it in the water. And I was like, that's an interesting thought, because the water's receded. And so maybe that's been there for a little while. But, it had cash. It had also these papers, like whenever you come through Mexico from other countries, it's basically you fill this thing out. But there's been times we found this same form before, and it's basically like Mexico lets them come through. And so they just fill this form out. And, okay, keep going north. And so we find these, and there's like multiple ones. So we're like, he's thinking that maybe it might have been a guide, because maybe she's holding on to papers of multiple people. Like, who knows? But
yeah.
But, but to find that too, that put two and two together, that because that tank was there, I was like, I have a feeling that maybe he was over there getting water.
Probably.
And because where a lot of times in this northern quadrant of our property, there's a lot of backpacks that we see up there and things too. And
the road less traveled.
It is. And that they say it's the huge corridors right through that. And our neighboring property, there's a section that the Border Patrol, the guy told me that, he's like, yeah, that's like a highway right now. It's like not even just crossing, it's a highway. And so but they need to get water too. And that's one of the tanks that's almost filled year round unless we have a severe drought. So they might have gotten in water. And there's always pills you'll find, like tablets, like different things, like purifying water, because, it's like you can't bring over.
You can't drink that water.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to purify it.
And you're not going to be able to hold multiple gallons for your journey across. And, it was hot. It's like 80 degrees that day too, right? But, for this time of year.
Yeah.
And that's, anyway, so that happened. Border Patrol guy comes out. We talked to him, took him to the spot. He's going to go look around and investigate. It's 5 hours later at this point in time. You're cleaning your deer. And, Colin and I went on that drive, and we're just kind of like shaking our heads like, this is like, can't believe that this just happened. We've talked about it. We know the people who it's happened with the family and things of recent, but it, hadn't happened to us while we're here ever recently. And so it was just kind of a weird dynamic. And then that changed our viewpoint on where we were going to hunt for the rest of the trip.
That's right. We there's a sort of a south and a north section. They're if you imagine overlaying two rectangles, the top right corner would intersect with the bottom left corner in a way where you have not like a perfect rectangle, but like sort of an offset rectangle, and we chose
almost that Tetris piece that you're always trying to get at the very end.
Yeah, that's
of the
right.
Game, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And the south quadrant is where the house is. There's a lot of more driving around. It's more open there, so it just felt like that. Let's just kind of stay in that section. And
because I was surprised that we all saw game too. Because that made me think that it wasn't a large group. Because
me too. I agree.
A lot of times I've gone out on hunts in the past with my buddies, Rob and Jacob. I remember one we went out, and none of us saw anything, and that's odd because there's times you see 30 to 50 deer at a sitting. So to see nothing and three of us, and it didn't occur to me. I don't know why, but it just didn't at the time what it could be. And then all of a sudden we get back to the house and there's two Border Patrol helicopters right over that area. And I'm like, oh, we're in the woods with a bunch of people. Like while we were hunting, there's folks that are in the woods there too.
Just sitting there. Yeah.
And so the game been coming around, right? And or they're since been through and the game's not. So it was, that we didn't want to have that kind of thing. You don't, we're not going to come to hunt. We don't want to get, skunked by that situation. So we said, okay, we're going to go and hunt in the south.
Yeah, and we did. We set ourselves up and had a morning hunt where, personally, I saw some action like early, like where I don't know if anyone's had this. I know people have had this experience out there where like bushes look like bucks or animals.
It's a 24-point buck.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're in that kind of light, and I'm actually seeing like the bush move, so I know animals are moving, and more time goes by, and it's about to be sunrise, and I'm starting to really make everything out, seeing action, and then when the sun rises a few minutes later, like there's disbursement, and I didn't see anything else that morning. You guys saw stuff. I don't recall, but I just know I was skunked at a place that you shouldn't be skunked.
We came home with an empty vehicle in the back because we didn't get anything that came across us that was, and it kind of, like you said, to our rules for ourselves of what we find to be shooters here. And we're really hoping, Colin, he feeds his family with venison every year, and they love it. And he's like, I want to go home, and he's with some meat in the cooler. And so it's a Sunday, afternoon now, and he's leaving Monday morning, and we were hoping to see something.
Well, it was not weird, but it had kind of a real fast start, and then the next 2.5 days were. I mean, I shot the doe, and there was a couple rabbits in there, but. The next 2.5 days were like just slow all of a sudden.
Yeah. So then Sunday night, little bit of pressure with that night. Colin's leaving the next morning early. He's not going to hunt Monday morning with us. And so we want to make sure that we can find a good spot. We kind of had that the slow Sunday morning. None of us saw anything we could shoot. Right. And so we all kind of went our separate ways. And then, then things changed.
Yeah. You were sitting on basically the south edge of the property, and Colin and I were kind of right in the middle, sort of the north side of that southern quadrant. Obviously, we weren't going to the north, as we mentioned before. And we're hunting and texting, of course, and all of a sudden, bang! You hear the gunshot go out, and I'm texting over to George and Colin like, "Hey, who was that?" And so George was like, "Yep, that was me." And then we proceed to ask, well, what'd you get? What'd you lay down here? And he said, surprise. And basically, we knew that he was saying, it'll be a surprise. You guys will have to wait. And so then my mind starts racing. What did you get? Well, I'll just have to wait. And then time goes by, and we're probably, 30 to 35 minutes away from sunset. And I start seeing some good action on where I'm sitting, and a small buck comes out. Then there's this buck that comes out that has a really kind of a funky rack where it's like a typical. I think it was a 8-point, but then there was like a tine that sort of was going backwards or whatever. And I started taking pictures of it. To me, it looked like a 4.5-year-old buck. And then I was texting that to George, and he was like, "Wow, I think that's a really old buck." And so I just started watching it for a while, and then I look over to the left, and there's some does that are hanging out in that lane. There was 2 of them, and then I'm continuing to watch these 2 bucks kind of, go back and forth. And I was taking videos of this old buck, but I wasn't really sure if I don't know. I wasn't really feeling like that was the right buck at the time. And then so I am looking over at these doe, and I'm thinking, well, maybe one of those, And so I put the gun up and just kind of looking down there through the scope, because like I'll use binoculars, camera, scope, and then while I'm doing that, I look back into the lane where these bucks are, and they had been there for probably at least 15 minutes then. And all of a sudden they're like looking at the brush real intensely. And I'm like, that's weird. Not weird, but like that's something's happening. I look back at the doe, keep the head count going. Just want to make, just in case it's something else stepped out over there. And then I look back and I see, that old buck I thought was a decent size. I see it might as well have been a cow or elk. I see a really big body come out of the brush line. First, I see sort of the head and front shoulders, and the light was low enough where I knew I could tell that the main beam on the antler was like big, but I couldn't really see the antlers at this point. And then so I started watching. This is all like within a couple seconds here. I watched him kind of come out, immediately take the gun out the window, and then put it into the window that faces
you moved
down
left
that
to
lane.
center, right?
Oh yeah, went and did that pretty quickly. It worked out where in this particular blind the gun can rest in a real comfortable way on the front of the stock, and it's just there's another little chair in there, and it's just a little spot to get your elbow down, and everything just made good contact. And the scope was immediately on, at this point, the tail of the buck walking away from me. So he can't, he was coming in and he wasn't slowing down. He came and then hooked it up the lane, went up the lane away from me. And then the other buck, the smaller buck of the 2 I saw previous, he was starting to get in the way of this big buck that was walking away from me. And I had a couple of moments there where I could shoot, and again, a few seconds. I had like one opportunity where I could shoot him in the neck, maybe, like on the underside. But then I realized, okay, he actually was eating a piece of corn right there, because we'll lay it out in the road, and he starts to quarter away, which means that his tail is still facing me, but I'm seeing more of his body. And I start to see his neck and his shoulder, and the other small deer is he's starting to cross
in front.
And as that deer is crossing, and basically the back section of his body uncovered, like he's crossing in a way where the back section is now only covering half of the deer that I wanted to shoot.
Right.
And as that was happening, the deer went broadside, which means that he was perpendicular to me, which was perfect.
Yeah.
And the scope, everything was completely still. And that young deer didn't even finish crossing before I pulled the trigger, because those big bucks, these giant bucks, they can be gone just like that.
Yeah.
Just like that.
So many stories of almosts.
Oh, and I didn't want to be an almost in that moment.
And we've learned that's
because I've been an almost before.
Yeah, same here. I don't know many hunters that haven't. If they,
right.
if you haven't, you're probably telling a tall tale, because there's a lot of those.
So pull the trigger, and something I've been doing recently as a shooter is I've kind of staying in the scope and watching things happen. Well, came out of the scope, but I still saw this guy kick like a horse. And then he proceeds to run into the brush. And when you see that kick, and I didn't hear. See, sometimes you can hear like a thud,
The thwack.
the thwack.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just didn't hear it, and so but I saw he kicked so hard, and
You knew it was a hit. Right.
every time that I've had to go into the brush and find something that kicked that hard, you find it, you know. But the even within the first minute or two, the uncertainty sets in a little bit, and it's like it's not did I hit it? It's more like how did I hit it and where did it go? And so I think with last shooting light, now there's another 20 or 30 minutes to go. And you guys were like texting back and forth. And I remember picking up the phone after a bit, and you had asked, who made the shot? And then like Colin had said a couple things, and then you were like, man, Matt is silent right now. Like something good's happened over there.
He's in go mode, yeah.
Yeah. And so I finally text him that, hey, I shot something. And George's like, what'd you get? And I'm like, surprise. You're going to get a surprise too, man.
Volley this right back into your court, sir.
Exactly.
Yes. I was like,
so,
that's great.
Yeah. And so we still had some light. And I was texting George away from the group text saying, man, I really, really hope Colin gets one.
Yep.
And, you know, I don't think I think you were with Colin when he was telling how he got his. I don't know if I ever actually heard that bit because everything got crazy that night.
It was last light. He got it at the very last minute, and basically doe's coming across, and he popped it, and you know it. We'll tell that because that's part of the story too. But you know, I mean, we basically just had to track it in the woods for a minute with the blood trail. It was very light, but then we kind of did the grid search and stuff too and found it. But
that took a bit. I mean,
but he got it. But I mean,
yeah.
but I think we need to come back, chronologically here and then what happened.
Yeah, and so we're all in surprise mode, and so George and Colin show up to my blind, and we drive down the lane, and. When we parked the buggy, we were shining light on the road, and I said, George, you remember what happened here last year? I mean, it's the same spot.
200 yards from the blind, and the exact same spot you took the shot.
Yeah,
last year. And this is your last year, your 10-point buck. We'll show a picture. And your 10-point buck, which was your largest mature first.
It's the first mature buck I shot, and I think that there'll probably be. We could have a podcast on that.
Oh,
because there's so many years kind of leading up to it. Like the deer that have been. Everybody's been through this, whether you do it as a kid or an adult. I mean, like you layer on knowledge and information and practice and experience and I wasn't one of those people who shot a big something my first time or first year out. It took years to get there. And so that was an incredibly proud moment. And that last year and this year, it's just like, oh, I shot something like that. I mean, it was a mature buck I shot. I knew I'd shot it. I knew I hit it, as we mentioned before. But in that moment when we were about to start looking for a blood trail, it was just like a wave came over me of like, wow, I cannot believe that this is happening in the same spot.
Same
exact spot.
Last year's, you knew which way it went in. It went in on the right.
Oh yeah.
And so we went and tracked it and got it.
Yep.
This year it was facing left.
Last year, though, we went in and got it, but that was a little bit of a grid search. One didn't leave much of a blood trail.
No, and it was in some it was very hard to get into that area. That spot, there's a lot of cactus, there's a lot of mesquite, but it's very thick, and there's areas you can kind of step between the cactus, but it's like,
and then there's like these little open spots, but it's like you might step over a cactus and get into an open spot and then kind of look around and be like imprisoned by cactus.
Yeah, you kind of do like a triple jump to get through some of those areas.
Yeah. And so when we found that buck last year, I mean, he was laying on his belly with arms kind of folded underneath it and just sort of like head just there with I mean, it was not laying on the side, sort of like laid out on its belly.
Yeah. Like it kneeled down and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it, exactly. And so, and that was interesting. I mean, that was a real interesting.
I'd never seen that before.
Find.
Ever.
Yeah.
I always see them on their side. Never seen them like that in that kind of like kneeled down upright position. That was amazing.
And so this year George, you found the blood on the road.
Yep.
Because I was looking at a different spot. He was about 10 yards ahead of me, and he found the blood. And then we flashed the flashlights into the thick there, and it was like, that's a bloody cactus. That's a bloody cactus.
I didn't know he had red cactus here.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, like, blood trail was easy, and so we just kind of started walking through there, and I got ahead of you guys, and so I look up and over. I see a cactus, and then with the light, I kind of see like a brown back, and then you heard me yell out, "Found him!" And I walk over there, and I walk up on this deer, and I almost had I was shocked. I could not believe what I was looking at. Part of it was antler, part of it was body. I mean, but it's just I didn't think that. It's weird. I've had some emotion come over me about like how could somebody do this in the same spot, you know, and like not like I don't deserve it kind of thing, but like a kind of like I feel very blessed and lucky, and like I can't believe I was at the right spot at the right time. This deer has only been seen on the camera like once or twice. It is a very, very mature, like 6.5-year-old giant body buck. I mean, like this is the kind of deer that like is that big for a reason. I mean, and I'm just completely shocked. And then George comes in, and he has the emotion that your buddy would have. Like he's incredibly excited. When I get excited, or in those kind of moments, I get a little quiet, and I'm just like a little like I'm just thinking a lot, you know, and I'm taking it in.
You're in a little bit of shock,
but then
too.
you're shocked. But your buddy is like,
oh hell yeah!
Oh my god,
yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, he was laid down on his belly, and in the exact same way as last year's deer.
Yeah, almost like you imagine they kneeled down, like their legs are tucked underneath. The same thing, upright in that sense.
Yeah, upright, kind of, and it's just one went one way, one went the other, and but this buck was a little different. The body ended up being, or the whole, he weighed 205 pounds.
Live weight, yeah.
Live weight, and
which is massive.
Oh yeah, and the antlers they're beautiful. I mean every set of antlers that you get, whether it's a cull buck or a massive mature buck, there's always characteristics, and every one of them are so unique. And this one, it's 18.25 inches wide on the main frame. The tines are kind of, I would say, normal. They're thick, you know, normal in terms of height, and they're thick. And then there's this one on the left side. There's an extra point that comes up. So it's like you call it a mainframe 8 with an extra point. So a 9-point
typical
buck.
8. Yeah, with the
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so.
And they would call that in other parts of the world a 4x4. We'd call it an 8-point. It's just a matter of where you grew up or what you hear. So but it's 4 on each side, including the brow tine is that.
That's right. And coming back around to the surprise bit, I think George got a hell of a surprise in that moment.
My goodness, dude. I was blown away. I've never seen a deer that big here. Now, I've seen pictures, and someone shot this deer, and they've sent that over, but I've never seen one that somebody took like that ever before in my life, ever hunting.
Big bodied.
It blew me away. I mean, it was massive. It looked like a different species. It was just like, oh, that. I mean, when you see a mature deer wherever you are, and it's fully mature and a big one, like it will pale the other ones in comparison, and you're like, oh, that's the big one. Okay, that's what a lot of people are after.
When he stepped out, saying cow or elk was obviously exaggerating, but he did dwarf those other two bucks.
Which were not small.
No, and it was just the instantaneous, like, oh my goodness, like there's no question one bit, And so, and when I say that, I mean in terms of getting ready to shoot him, you know. And so, yeah, it was an effort getting him out of there. Thank you, Colin, for removing and making a pathway through the cactus.
Good job, buddy. He took some limb loppers and cut off these, the ears of the cactus basically, and cutting off all this section, and made an amazing little corridor that we could go through with minimal pokes and prods going through the way. I think you and I are both still picking out some cactus from it, but it wasn't what we would have had. It would have been cactus thorns all over that deer, because there is no way that we were going to be able to pick that deer up, even with the three of them, and carry it over the cactus and us not land in one ourselves. Like there was no clear path.
No, you had to make it.
And I mean, you can just see it. Like
we had to do that last year.
Yes, we did. My uncle, George Bow, he cleared some of the stuff for us too, and was helping us out there as well. I mean, we went out there with shovels and things, and some limb loppers, and we cleared some things, and we got to that other buck to be able to get it out. So we were very familiar with the process, but we were kind of busy inching it along ourselves, and Colin helped clear that path so we could have a good right of way, which was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, between the two paths from last year to this year, they come out right at the same spot. I mean, the deer may have been shot 10 yards apart or something like that, and they went in at different angles, but just in terms of the way we got them out, they kind of came out right at the same spot, and you can see one side to the other. We can see where we cleared. And so we were joking. Maybe we call that Mitchell crossing.
No, we're not joking.
Or not joking.
There's a little T-post that I guess used to have like a game trail camera on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a Mitchell crossing street sign just for that. That is officially. Oh, where did you see that big old deer yesterday? Oh man, it was over there by Mitchell Crossing. That's where all the big ones are. Like that's yours now. That has been named. It is so.
And it's just it's interesting to think about that. Like, this buck is in it's in a category of like how much. What I always think about with species, like what is the best that not best, but what's the
representation?
The representation at its finest.
Sure.
And this buck it's getting closer to that. Like
it's
what
that.
is.
It's that for Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
For Texas, that is that is the one that you see in the magazine covers. It's the one that you always dream of at night when you're at hunting camp and you're going to sleep and you're thinking about what you want to see. Now, obviously, we're a little different. We'll do, we're not dreaming. Like, some hunters would come here and they'll leave empty because they're waiting for that big buck the whole time, and they have empty coolers. And I've known people who do that. We're getting the doe in, we're doing our thing. We talked about all that. Like, but obviously you want to get a big animal with a lot of meat, feed your family and your friends. And, when you like you said, you didn't even really get to pay attention to the antlers. Cause you and I don't know many people that do, we're not eating them, but while it's really cool to see them, because then as you get a Euro mount or shoulder mount or whatever, you just cut off the antlers. Like, those antlers tell that story of that hunt, of that time, of that friendship, of that camaraderie, of the work you did, all the things that lead up to it. It is. Yeah. In that sense. So when people hear that kind of trophy, that's the trophy deer. For us, that thing is a representation of what all the milestones went into that experience and all the things that you had with your friends in that time, right? It's a timestamp. It's not, but we're not.
Yeah, and it's ever since Steven Ranella talked about that, because that's what a trophy really means. I I don't mind calling it a trophy.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and
it's a trophy. It's a trophy buck.
He said that well,
and it's everything that George just mentioned. I mean, it'll be a part of my history.
Yep. I mean, you are truly a Texas trophy hunter. You've done
nice
it.
Plug.
Yes.
So after that, there's 2 more deer to get on the ground, and we head over to your spot. And we went to Colin's, right?
Got Colin's.
Okay, and like you mentioned, some tracking. We found
some blood. Did grid search again. Found a little more blood, and I ended up coming across it and got it back to the buggy and put it in, and that was it definitely had to kind of go. There was a little bit more of a clear path. We had to cut stuff down on that one. It wasn't like sweating profusely, because by the time Matt and I had pulled his deer out, I mean, it felt like we had done some.
I was breathing hard.
Yeah, it was a big workout.
It was a big workout.
And we got the doe out. It was like, yes, you got one to feed your family. And then we ended up going over to the next, to
your spot
where we were like, okay, we're gonna do the next search. Well, you guys didn't know what you're going into, so we didn't know if you're searching.
It was a surprise.
Or what, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So pulled around the corner, and I think it was you that said something first, because it was in the middle of the road. You're like, is that a deer?
Yes.
And I'm like, uh-huh. And Colin's like, are those antlers?
Mature buck.
And you're like, what? And we drove up to it, and it's a 10-point mature buck, probably 5.5 years old. And
every bit of what this place represents.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, and if I saw, like, the thing we do a lot of times, you see a 4.5-year-old here that's got, and I say 4.5 because they're born in the spring, right? So by the fall hunting season, the half. Some people will just say, if you see a 4-year-old deer, we would let a 4 or 4.5-year-old deer with the 10-point rack stay and see what he produces the next year. And it's a gamble, but that's what we do out here. And that's the kind of hunter that I've taught / learned to become. And, I want to see him at 5.5 or older, and that's usually when I take those. And I didn't really get a chance to do any age determination on this one, because I'm looking out, and at 200 yards, there's some does out, and all of a sudden, pop out of the brush or on the edge of the lane, I see him coming out. And I see the antlers first, and I'm like, oh, that's a big rack. And I'm like looking at the neck, and it's got that semi-swollen thing kicking, and the body looks good, but I'm looking straight on to him, So I like look at his head, and it's like, a little darker around the top of his forehead, which is some kind of an indicator of it being a little older potentially. And so I'm seeing this, and I'm like, I think that this is a mature deer. And I'm getting like Matthew has these headsets that some people will have. You put their, like regular old earmuffs type things, but they have an electronic function into them where it actually has like a microphone almost, like, so when you're listening, you can still hear everything. It's over your ears, but when a gunshot is taken, it immediately silences that. I guess it clips at a certain decibel. I'm not really exactly sure.
Or something like that.
Gotcha. So then it's not going to be damaging to your ears. Mm-hmm. I had these custom earplugs that I've had for a decade or something like that, and I'm fumbling with them. Now I've got it already set up to where I'm looking through the scope, and I'm trying to put them in my ear, and I have a rest on it, but I'm not having my hand over the stock or anything, or by the sling. So like I just have my right hand, it's against my shoulder, my right elbow's on like a ledge, because I'm in this deer blind that we call it the octo. It's like an octagon and
shape.
So the shape, and so there's 8 windows, and we black out the back 4, so there's only 4 you can see through. And so I've got my right elbow on this rest, and I got the gun out the window, and it's on the other ledge, and I have I got a bead on where I want to shoot, and I can take a shot if I need to, but I'm trying to get my earplugs in, because I like to hear things, and this is a very loud. I'm shooting with my 280 AI that Jason Garvey built. We've had him on a previous podcast. He builds custom rifles, custom ammo. He has a long range course that he's teach people, and he helped take me out to 800 yards and feel comfortable with longer shots. And I've taken some 200 yard shots, but a 200 yard but now like a 200-yard shot seems very easy to me, comparatively to me 5 years ago. And so I'm on that. I'm ready to pull that trigger if I need to. I've got the center mass on like its neck, chest area, but I'm kind of hoping he turns broadside, but he's seemingly a little bit skittish. And so I finally pop my earplugs in the right ear, the correct ears, and get him in. And I decide that I can't wait any longer because I don't know what he's going to do. It's that same kind of thing. You know, you see it, you seize that moment and take that opportunity, because I didn't want that opportunity to pass me by. I got no deer in the coolers, and this is a big mature buck, and it's going to have a lot of meat on it. And I let her fly, man. And took it kind of in the neck, body area, chest area kind of. And it just dropped right there and didn't move.
Such
didn't
a good
kick.
feeling.
Such a good feeling.
Yeah.
Such a good feeling. It wasn't like the hog where I was like, uh-oh. You know, now the chance comes into play. But it's like, you saw your hit, you know, and like you knew it was a good hit.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
I knew where I was, you know, putting the crosshairs in the right spot. So, and I had dialed up just before that, up 3 clicks on 0.3 mils, because that's like where mine is, you know, dead center at 200. So I rangefinder, my binoculars have a rangefinder in it. Click that, see what it is. I'm like, okay, click, get it up to 3, and then to 0.3 mils, and that was the shot, man. And wouldn't you know it, that shot was in 200 yards in this exact same lane from where I shot my buck last year. Have you heard this story before, Matthew?
Yes.
The exact
have.
same spot.
Yeah.
Last one ran 30 yards. This one just dropped, but in the exact same spot. And I purposefully corned it thinking, well, I saw one here last year. It's a little patch of grass. And so the does out there, they're munching on that grass there, right? And whatever it is. And they're eating that, and there's some corn in there too, but they go to that grass even if there's no corn. A lot of times we'll hunt without any, you know, corn on the ground like that too. And I've seen them over there, and there just happened to be some corn there too that we threw in that little spot. I was like, oh, let's start here. It's like at 220 yards, and then at the very front of it, it's at 200, and that's right where that thing was, man. And dropped it, and that I was just, man, I was so happy and so shocked at that what had just happened. And then that's when it hit me that like, this is the same spot. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going through this same thing you're going through with, you know, a couple thousand yards away, and we're both like just baffled.
Like, what?
And, you know, like we mentioned before, Matthew and I have a lot of synchronicities. There is, and you know, with I mean, of course that happened. It made sense.
Yeah.
That just happened. Like when because we got to his first and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I cannot wait for you guys to see this so that I can tell you the story that this happened to me too. He's like, can you believe it? The same spot? I'm like, oh my gosh, what are the odds? And then I'm playing it down. I'm like, oh, well, mine's not going to be anything like this. And you know, I'm just like, I can't wait for him to be like, isn't this where we got your deer last year? You're like, wait a minute. And last year's was, I looked it up, December 12th, and we're recording this here on December 12th, but yesterday, December 11th. So almost a year to the day.
Almost a year. Because last year I shot mine in the morning, you shot yours in the evening.
Yeah. It was the same day.
No, right on.
But I mean, it was, but it wasn't the same hunt, like an evening hunt.
This time, same hunt. And
probably the shots within 15 minutes of each other, or 20 minutes or something like that. I mean, it was like...
and these are there's going to be more mature bucks here, especially during the rut. Like, this is like right on the edge, pre-rut.
It's starting. But
it is starting. You're seeing a lot of chasing, but
yeah.
It didn't... Yeah, in Texas, you kind of need a weather system to
and
get it going.
Well, it was the same thing that happened last year. I mean, we were here, and then it's like the very last morning we hunted, it's like, oh, it's game on now. Yeah. And I mean, we're hunting tomorrow morning, and it could be game on, so it's going to drop a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be as severe as the weather system as last year. No. And if that is the indicator, you know, I'm not sure what all the indicators of the lunar cycles. There's all these things at play.
Stuff, but
you know, how many people are coming through your property? You know, there's a lot of different things that are going on there too. But
these two are, I mean, they're Yeah, these are two very mature bucks.
These are Texas trophies, man. These are, I mean, like in every sense of the word, of like what you look at like on a magazine. That's like it's the thing that you kind of hope and dream for.
Yeah.
And it is like this dream come true that like to have that happen, both of us the same day, birthday twinning it up, man. It was just like, what? Are you kidding me? Yeah. And then we send the pictures over to my uncle and to Larry. I was like, hey, have you seen any of these bucks before?
Oh, this is insane.
He sends back a game trail camera, and if there's a water trough near the house here that we kind of keep filled up for animals year round. I mean, we filled up a lot of water troughs year round because out here in Southwest Texas, it can get dry. And we've had some drought issues earlier this year, which is why I think we didn't have a very good fawn survival rate this year. But on this picture, what do you know? It's both of our bucks together, drinking water together. And we'll have to look at the date and see if there's some numerical synchronicity there too. But I didn't pay attention to that one yet. But they were in velvet then, so they hadn't put on the weight that, I mean, especially yours. I think yours might have eaten all the fawns. I'm not quite sure.
I think he did. Honestly,
so big. But we got it back here, and
it's insane because yours, like, they're both so beautiful in different ways.
Yep.
They kind of like going to the antler thing. Yours is a very, very classical, very prominent 10-point.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you were dreaming of a 10-point, this is the one you want.
Yep.
I mean,
and like yours last year. I mean, those are both great examples.
Right.
The symmetry, good tine length. I mean, it's a cool. I mean, yeah. And go on.
No, that's it. It's just, then I've already described mine earlier. The sort of the 9-point with the little funky point on the one side, and it's just we've got some pictures of them side by side, and just an incredible experience, a very unique one. That probability says probably won't happen again.
Well, we probably had the probability thing going last year when we went 10 for 10. We're like, what? How can we top this hunt? Like, that's going to be a tough one to top, man.
Yeah, because we had some days here on this trip. It was like the first day was an explosion. The night we're talking about now was an explosion.
Chirp, chirp. Crickets
between,
Yeah. You got skunked on one hunt.
That was a spot where it's unfathomable.
You see 30 to 40 to 50 deer
sometimes
on like last season.
Last
season it was like that. This season's different.
It's different. But it's just interesting that how like every trip's going to be different in terms of what you're doing. Like there's something special about every trip,
right?
And there's memories created and all that stuff. And this one's powerful. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, I mean,
both personal best. I mean,
we have an article about a couple shared hunting experiences with some turkeys. It's called A Tale of Two Turkeys and the Gobblers They Got. And it'll be out in the spring. Texas Trophy Hunter is a magazine. The Journal of the Texas Trophy Hunter is going to be running it. I've had a couple articles in there before. And we submitted that to them, and they are just really excited. But they wanted to wait till turkey season to put it out, so it's kind of more, along that lines. Right now, it's very deer focused. Mm-hmm. So that'll be published. But with that in mind, and knowing that they like my writing and your writing is the same style of awesomeness, and like you're a great writer, and I wasn't trying to pat my own back there, but
sure sounded that way, buddy.
I know. Yeah. I'm not that guy, I promise. But like, you're a good writer, and so
Thank you.
We're gonna tackle this in some way that we're maybe both telling our own stories, but then there's a crossover there, mm-hmm. and of the synchronicities of that. It's just, it has to be written because that experience is just so powerful. Like I still am just beyond blown away that happened. Like, and at the same time, like, like we were talking about, like, how do you top that? It's like, oh man, I don't know what next year's going to be.
Yeah. And I'm kind of feeling like it's not like you don't top it.
No.
Like last year was different from like just sort of everything, like we were paid, like, but we together got something 10 out of 10 sits, right?
Yeah.
So that meant that maybe when I shot something, George didn't.
Yep.
And then the next sit, I would shoot something, and I'm sorry, you would shoot something and I wouldn't. And so we had
sometimes both.
Yeah, and so we had these moments where like we like one person can get some stuff done while the other person's busy cleaning an animal or whatever. But this year, obviously, the story we just told is the big one for this year. But it's like there was something special about last year too. I mean, obviously my first mature buck and what we're talking about, and so I'm looking forward to seeing not necessarily how we top each trip, but how we what's a strong memory from each one.
You're absolutely right, and I think I misspoke by saying that because I'm not trying to top this experience and replace it, or top last year's experience. And
I know what you mean, though. It's like like how do you keep
like the level of the level of what happened last year, the level of what's happened this year, the experiences of like. Last year we had all these different, game animals. And so like we had such a diverse, collection of things to cook from with our freezer. And it was like the bounty was the amazing part. And this time it's like the mature bucks that we took were the amazing part. And I'm not going to discount your does or Colin's does. It's not about like, it's not deal with these. It's like but it's just like, that's rare.
Yeah.
And like, last season was rare in a different way. This season, or this trip, because, we'll still probably hunt, in January out in Central Texas because we have the MLD permit and hunt till the end of February there. But we just accomplished something individually rare. That was my personal, like I have not taken a mature deer here like this one. I've taken some 10 points that didn't have the brow tines, or I guess 8. There was slick 6. The racks weren't anything like that. It was like, I still look at every single one. I can tell you a story. I can tell you what I was wearing. I can tell you, like those antlers provide those memories and stuff too. But I had never taken a mature Texas whitetail in this out in South Texas. Hadn't done that, and I've been hunting here. I mean, you see that first deer; it's right over your shoulder right now, and that was my first deer here in 1991. Hunted with my uncle George Bow. He taught me how to hunt, and like that was my first one. And I've had dozens and dozens since, but never taken anything like this one. And that, just for that rareness of that, I mean, I've hunted here every year. There's maybe 1 or 2 years that I didn't in my career, but. I'm 43 years old. The first one's like, just, you can do the math there. It's many hunting seasons.
That's right. Yeah.
And I used to come here and I would spend sometimes, a week at a time, a couple times a hunting season, and in my, earlier days, and, spend Thanksgiving here with my family and Christmas here with my family. And so there's a lot of hunts that went into that. So it didn't hit me until we're looking at ours side by side. And you were like, this is obviously my biggest mature that I've taken here, and I'm like, hey, it's mine too.
And I didn't even know that when you said that,
and I didn't even know it. Like it didn't hit me because I was still in kind of a shock, and I think I was just so shocked at. I mean, I had my own like feelings about after I had taken the steer, and I hadn't gone up to it yet until we're all there together. So it was gonna be a surprise to me on how big the body was, and it was a big deer, but I didn't know how big, and it was like I knew it wasn't like I didn't shoot the wrong deer. It wasn't like I made a mistake and break my own rule. I knew what I was doing, but I was still like, I hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And then to see yours, I was like, oh my God, I'm in this state of shock at that one and the rarity of that. I've never seen one on the ground like that in front of me. And like I said, I'm kind of, I'd say I'm a veteran hunter in Texas.
Right.
And that size deer, that size rack, that thick, how like those bases, man. I mean, there's so much girth to that deer, man, and like all around it. And I was in shock, and so it didn't register for me either until it was like side by side. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we just birthday twin that thing again.
Right.
Like amazing.
I mean, the thing that I take away too is more than anything is just the rarity of it, you know. and like we're talking with excitement, and we're very fortunate and blessed to have that opportunity to be in that position, that situation. So it's not necessarily like touting or anything. It's just more of we're trying to. This story is about how rare and how there's these small, interesting moments that we're both doing the same thing. The same spot killed, the same day, again, the birthday thing. I mean, it's an interesting, rare story.
It is. It's so like I couldn't have written this idea of what I would have thought would have happened. We always say, "Oh man, you're gonna get that 18-point buck today. All right, good luck," as we're walking off or whatever. And but if you had said you guys are both gonna do this on that day, I'd be like, "There's no way. There's no possible."
Oh, of course, yeah. You would say you would be like, "No." But the funny thing is like as you always do when we get out of the buggy, it's like, good luck with your whatever, like you just said, the 18-point buck or whatever, and I think you'd even mentioned like something about seeing another one that when we decided where we were going to sit, you were like, well, we know what you're going to see over there, yeah. So I think I think that it'll be kind of going back to the different trips and like how we think about them. We like to name things, so, I proposed that last year we call 10 for 10 or 10-10 or whatever.
The perfect 10 or whatever.
That.
Yeah.
This year, I think we call it the trophy year.
Yep.
Because I think that's it, And who knows what each other year will be called, but man, I cannot wait to do this every year and on this. This during this time in December here in South Texas is a very special thing.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be looking up at these antlers, getting a Euro mount done from your buddy. You're getting a Euro mount done too. I'm going to look up these antlers. I'm going to remember all these special moments, the camaraderie with you, with Colin. I hadn't seen Colin in a long time. And I love that kid. He's my brother, man. We've grew up together. I think he was 7 and I was 8 when we met. And it just filled my heart.
So special to have all the people.
Yeah, he's one of my best buds.
Yeah.
I mean, you're one of my best buds. And so, like, for us to all be able to come out here and, and unfortunately, my uncle got sick. He was supposed to be here again this year. My dad's dog, got in a fight and had a bunch of stitches. And so that dog will chase deer or rabbits or everything through this brush, and a freshly stitched up dog running through this stuff out here in South Texas was basically asking for some serious trouble and some emergency trips to the vet, potentially opening those back up. Right. And it was just, so he sat this one out. He's, we'll be doing, another family trip here soon. He'll be out here with us, but, that it, all the things you can plan out for a trip, things are always changed. As soon as you're about to go and, get out to your blinds, the tire goes flat and you got to change the tire. Like we did that this trip, but like, I'm just saying, like, you can make all these plans, but there's not, and like all of those experiences of this trip and the Border Patrol, the incident of having, someone trespassing on our property, whoever they were, and all these things, like, there's so much experience. And I mean, we're just talking about this now, but this is something I'm going to be filtering through. But I'll also remember, like, coming back and, you guys letting me talk about my feelings and the emotions that were going on through me about the difficulty that I had of processing the idea of, like, what this has turned into and how people are coming through and how it's changed the dynamic of my family ranch. I used to be out here. My uncle taught me gun safety young age. I know this may sound crazy to some listeners, and it might sound right at home to others, but I was 10 years old walking around this ranch and with a 22 in my hand, bagging rabbits and coming back home and cooking them and cleaning them, or javelina. And my parents had no problem. They knew I was very capable. I was very safe. I was very responsible. Yeah. Now maybe in my 20s I wasn't as much, but when I was younger, like, they knew that they could trust me here, and having a daughter around that same age, and getting 10 yards away from me at this ranch now. Mm-hmm. And that lack of freedom here feels like an impingement, I'm telling y'all, it really kind of messed me up the other night.
Yeah,
and I got two of my best buds here who let me talk it out, and let me, kind of get my perspectives out and try to put my head around it and stuff too. And I'll be looking at those antlers, remembering the kind of support system, the kind of friendships that I have. And, I love you, man. And I love Colin.
I love you too, bud.
This trip, it did so much for me. And to be able to have something up there that I can look up on the wall, it's going to exemplify all that. And we get to eat it.
Yeah.
And BDT Cooks will be filming some stuff.
Yeah.
And we get to enjoy with our friends and with our family and my wife and my daughters, and being able to cook that for all of them. And man, I cannot wait to get back home and prep that up and cook that first meal, man. And that's
Me too.
It means a lot. It really does. Anything else you want to say before we sign off here, Matthew?
No, I'm good to go here. I just want to thank you again. It's such a rare treat to immerse oneself in this environment, and I love you too, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. There's one other thing. We've got to hunt tomorrow morning.
That's right.
Let's get our butts out there. Let's have a cigar by the fire pit. Let's celebrate, and let's go out and see what we can see in the morning.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thank you for
care.
listening. Take care. We will be back again soon. BDT.
BT.